Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. So I'm very grateful to all the participants of the course who have kindly agreed to be a part of this Bhakti Shastri course in English. So we are very happy and grateful that you have taken out your valuable time to be with us and participate in this Bhakti Shastri course. And we hope and look forward to your presence in all the future sessions as well. Okay. So today in the orientation session, we will essentially try to discuss the importance of studying Srila Prabhupada's books, and we will try to understand this from a few quotes of Srila Prabhupada himself. Okay. So, Adi Bhagavan Prabhu, would it be okay if we call upon participants to read what's on the screen?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, I think that will be very interactive and keeping everybody alive.
Okay, that's good. So, so how do we do it? Should we go alphabetically or anyone volunteers?
Yeah, I think there will be volunteers. They are very enthusiastic to participate. I think there will be volunteers. We can ask for volunteering.
Okay. So you can decide who should speak.
Yeah. So devotees who wish to read, when Prabhuji asks, kindly raise your hand in the Zoom, not physically, but in the Zoom, if you know, there is a button on the reactions. There you click and then you will have a raise of hand option. So you can raise hand digitally on Zoom. Okay, so we have Anurag Prabhu here. Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Yes, you can read what's on the screen.
Bhaktivedanta Rajavidyalaya, Bhakti Shastri course.
I have gone ahead. How is it?
It's the first slide visible, Prabhuji.
First slide.
Oh, it's not gone ahead.
Maybe you can share again, Prabhuji. Stop and start.
Okay, okay.
Okay, meanwhile, I request Harsh Prabhu, Anuradha Mataji, and Isha Mataji, Jayashri Mataji, Kishore Madhav Prabhu to switch on their videos. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Okay, can you see now?
Yeah, now we are seeing the first slide.
Okay. Has it gone ahead now?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, Anurag Prabhu, please continue.
Every temple should be educational center. A Brahmana means they are teachers. Though So every temple should be an educational center, and the Brahmanas should be engaged. They should be properly educated and they should teach others also. In this way, temple means education in a spiritual life. A conversation on August 22nd, 1970.
Yes. So here we find Srila Prabhupada is saying that he wanted our ISKCON temples to be educational centers. He didn't want our ISKCON temples to be simply bell-ringing temples. As we find, there are so many such temples throughout India, we find, where people go to the temples, they may have darshan of the deities there, and they may put some donation in the hundi, and they may break some coconut or something like that. And then they walk out of the temple. And what happens after they walk out? Nothing happens. They remain as it is. So Srila Prabhupada didn't want our temples to be like that. Srila Prabhupada wanted our temples to be essentially educational centers, like universities, where systematic spiritual education is given to the people. And so he wanted the devotees to be like brahmanas who teach and give spiritual education to the people, so that people can accept the spiritual education and bring about a transformation in their lives. This is what Srila Prabhupada wanted. And that's the reason why having these educational programs is something which is very, very important, so that we can gain the spiritual knowledge and bring about a transformation in our lives for the betterment of our own lives. And so therefore, Srila Prabhupada is saying, temple means education and spiritual life. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada himself, he envisioned and he planned these various Shastri courses. And so we find Srila Prabhupada himself, he designed these courses. It's not that any one of us has come up with some bright idea to start these courses within ISKCON. No, these courses have been entirely designed by Srila Prabhupada himself. Srila Prabhupada gave the names of these courses. Srila Prabhupada, he told us what is the syllabus in these courses, what books are to be taught. Everything Srila Prabhupada has given us. We are simply trying to execute what Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do. And so it's Srila Prabhupada himself who designed these 4 courses, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhaktivedanta, and Bhakti Sarvabhauma. I have not put that letter over here, but Srila Prabhupada has written letters where he has clearly stated what books should be taught in each of these courses. And as most of you may be aware, that in Bhakti Shastri, we essentially teach these 4 books, Bhagavad Gita as it is, the Nectar of Devotion, the Nectar of Instruction, and Sri Ishopanishad. In the Bhakti Vaibhav, we cover the first 6 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the Bhaktivedanta, we cover the later 6 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that is from the 7th to the 12th canto. And in Bhakti Sarvabhauma, we cover the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is what Srila Prabhupada wanted, and that is what we are basically trying to do. Okay, as we already said it, the Bhakti Shastri, basically the 4 books that are taught are Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, and the Sri Ishopanishad. Okay, so all of you have assembled here today to study the Bhakti Shastri course. So we'd just like to have a few responses from some of you as to what do you hope to achieve by studying Bhakti Shastri? What are your expectations, or what is your purpose with which you want to study the Bhakti Shastri course? So let's hear a few responses from you.
So can I say something?
Okay, so fine. I think so. That's fine. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. This is Jayananda Krishnadas. I will beg forgiveness. I'm actually traveling, so I'm standing somewhere outside, and that is why, and somehow I'm able to attend this class today. Otherwise, I was thinking that I might miss it. So luckily, since I've got it, Prabhu, my main motive of joining this Shastri class is like, in spite of reading Bhagavatam and CC, like it has been a casual reading, I would say, with not much of a realization. Of course, Prabhupada's purports are like so beautiful, we are able to understand them. But this Shastri class is like more which I'm looking for, getting an in-depth understanding of those nice purports. So that is my main aim behind, logging myself for this course.
Okay, good, very good. So having an in-depth study of the Shastras, good. That's very nice.
Yeah, yeah. Hare Krishna, Dandal Prabhu Kishore Madhav here.
Yes.
See, it's more than 5-6 years that we are associated with ISKCON and IDC. We have done formal initiation is done, but then there was no
You're from
deep.
which place?
I am from Pune, Prabhu.
Okay, from Pune.
Yeah, originally from Nashik, but now now at Pune.
Hmm.
So some serious learning is required, because we otherwise, as Prabhuji have said, that we continue to learn Bhagavad Gita and all other books, but there is no serious learning or understanding. So this course will help me to go into a serious learning, and definitely I wish to be part of some DT service in future. That is my wish. So I want to be Bhakti Shastri.
Okay, okay, very nice. Thank you so much. Yes, Arun Jaiswal, bro.
Hare Krishna, Dandu Pranam. Getting my voice, Suji? Getting my voice?
No, we have this question here. So what do you hope to achieve by studying?
No, getting my voice. Are you there? Are you getting my voice?
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Then. Actually, Guruji, like being in the same line of other devotees, like I have been associated with devotees for the last 7-8 years, and I see when I attend Bhagavatam classes and different classes that how the different devotees like relish Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Like I was living in yoga in NVCC, so there especially different devotees would come, and I would see. This it is one of my desires that I should also be able to relish, which will happen only when I go in detail. So that is one of the reason, and I have joined this course.
Okay, good to understand the scriptures in great detail. Good, thank you very much. Yes, Yamuna Vilas Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam. Am I audible, Prabhuji?
Yes, very much.
So, Prabhuji, my main motive behind doing Bhakti Shastri course is because, like, one reason is it's been almost 6-7 years that I've been part of ISKCON, but I want to be very honest that I have not read the entire Bhagavad Gita yet. And whenever it comes, I have went to do book distribution also. I present Bhagavad Gita to others, but it always makes like question comes: have I studied Bhagavad Gita deeply to explain others? So my main reason is so that I can preach this knowledge to others. So before that, I need to study. So that's my main motive.
Yes, very nice. Yes. Srila Prabhupada, he did say that we don't want our devotees simply to distribute the books. We want them to read them. So yes. So very nice. Thank you so much. You're also from Pune itself?
Yes, Prabhuji, from Pune, but right now I'm in UK. So I'm in Manchester.
Okay, fine. Good. Anybody else would like to share? What are your reasons for joining this Bhakti Shastri course?
Prabhuji, for me also it's very similar reason. Because of multiple reasons, I was as I have read all these books, but never able to very properly understand or understand these. So now I was just when I saw the got the information about this course, just 1-2 days before, I was thinking that I would like to join such a course, and I was wondering where I can do. So
okay, very nice. Okay. So fine. So so basically, as many of you have said, you have joined the Bhakti Shastri course essentially to get a more in-depth understanding of the Shastras. And that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do. And so we will see some more quotes of Srila Prabhupada on why Srila Prabhupada wanted us to study his books in depth, very scrutinizingly. Okay, So somebody can read this quote, please.
Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 25-78. All of the devotees connected with this Krishna conscious movement must read all the books that have been translated. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep and fall down from their position. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure.
Yes. So here we find that Srila Prabhupada is giving an instruction for whom? All of the devotees. So here Srila Prabhupada is saying all of the devotees. So it's not an instruction which Srila Prabhupada is giving to some of the devotees. It's not an instruction to only senior devotees or anything like that. Srila Prabhupada is giving an instruction to all of the devotees connected with this Krishna consciousness movement. And the next word is must read. Okay, it's totally in the affirmative and there is no ambiguity. It's not that may read, can read or whatever. It's must read. And again, the next word is all of the books that have been translated. Okay, so Prabhupada is giving a very clear instruction. All of the devotees must read all of the books that have been translated. And of course, he is naming the important ones, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and others. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada is telling us the consequence of not reading. So if one does not take to spiritual life seriously by reading these books, then there is only one other option, and that is material life. There are not too many options. So the only other option is one will take to material life, and that is eating, sleeping, and then one will fall down from one's spiritual position and one will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure, which we are all looking for. We are all as spirit souls looking for happiness. And that happiness can be only obtained on the spiritual platform because we are spirit souls. And as spirit souls, we can only find happiness when we reestablish our relationship with the Supreme Lord. And that is what we have been hankering for since time immemorial. Since we have ever come to this material world, we are hankering for that transcendental pleasure. And so therefore, in order to achieve that life of transcendental pleasure, then it's very essential that we take to spiritual life, which is based on the reading of Srila Prabhupada's books very seriously. Okay, someone can please read this.
Answer to all questions. Study Bhagavad Gita as it is and Srimad Bhagavatam and continue to help your God brothers in developing Krishna consciousness. Develop your preaching in this way, and this will be the most successful and appreciated endeavor. When you study very carefully all of the literatures which are available, especially Bhagavad Gita as it is, you will have in your grasp answers to all questions that may be put to you. Please encourage the others to read this Bhagavad Gita at least one chapter every day.
So again, here you can see in this quote, the first word that Srila Prabhupada is using is study. So Srila Prabhupada didn't want us to casually read these books, just like reading some novels or newspapers, something like that. Srila Prabhupada wanted us to very deeply, scrutinizingly study these books. So he is in study Bhagavad Gita as it is in Srimad Bhagavatam and develop your preaching in this way. So if we want to preach, then the preaching has to be based on Srila Prabhupada's books. If we don't read Srila Prabhupada's books carefully, then our preaching will be based on so much of mental concoctions, and that may not be very successful and effective. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada is saying, you develop your preaching in this way by reading these books, and then that will be the most successful and appreciated endeavor. And the other point he's saying here is that if you read these books, again, he's not even saying read. Again, he uses the word when you study very carefully. So it's not some casual reading. Prabhupada's words are very selective. When you study very carefully all of the literatures which are available, then you will have in your grasp answers to all the questions. So when we are preaching, so many people may ask so many different questions. And if we want to be well equipped with the answers to these questions, then it's essential that we deeply study Srila Prabhupada's books. And here Srila Prabhupada is recommending that we read at least one chapter of the Gita every day. So quite a high expectation, someone may say. But then, yes, Srila Prabhupada did want us to regularly read his books. Okay, please read this one.
Free from all doubt. I want you readers, especially to become absorbed in the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and become yourselves completely convinced and free from all doubt. On this platform, you shall be able to carry on the work satisfactorily. But if there is a lack of knowledge, or if there is forgetfulness, everything will be spoiled in time. Especially, you must encourage the students to read our books throughout the day as much as possible and give them all good advice how to understand the book and inspire them to study the things from every point of view. Better to boil the milk very vigorously and make it thick and sweet. That is the best book. So, let us concentrate on training our devotees very thoroughly in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness from our book, from tape, by discussing always, and in so many ways, set them in the right proposition.
Yes, so here Srila Prabhupada is giving instructions to the leaders of the movement. And he's saying, I want you leaders especially to become absorbed in the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. So you can see, we have been seeing a few quotes so far. And we see that Srila Prabhupada is using the words study very carefully, scrutinizingly. And here he's saying, become absorbed. So absorbed means just like a sponge. You put a sponge in water, then all the water is absorbed. So similarly, he wanted us to absorb the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and become convinced of the philosophy. And when we become convinced, then we can be free from all doubts. And then he says, on this platform, so on this platform of a proper philosophical understanding, then one will be able to carry on the work satisfactorily. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then Srila Prabhupada says everything will be spoiled in due course of time. And so here, Srila Prabhupada is using this analogy of boiling the milk. And so when we boil the milk, what happens? So the water content of the milk evaporates. And then the milk becomes very condensed and sweet. So similarly, when we properly understand the knowledge of Krishna consciousness from Srila Prabhupada's books, and we practice that within our own lives, then we can bring about a transformation in our lives, and we can get rid of what is unwanted, that is the various anarthas. So just like the milk from the water content of the milk evaporates so that the milk becomes sweet. So similarly, the unwanted anarthas, which are cause of so much of distress within our own lives, can dissipate, evaporate. And then we also can become really wonderful, sweet devotees offerable to Guru and Krishna. And so I'm sure we all hope to become wonderful devotees offerable to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. And so if we want that to happen, then Srila Prabhupada is telling us here that we need to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness very thoroughly so that we are in a position to practice that within our own lives and purify ourselves of the various anarthas and thereby become wonderful devotees. Okay, please read.
Sri Krishna face to face.
Wait. Let us give a chance to others also to read, please. So maybe Yamuna Vilas Prabhu can read.
Nowadays, it seems that many of the older disciples, like yourself, are having difficulty. If you do not set the example for the younger students and take the responsibility for instructing them in the right line, how will things go on? Try to always study our books and see our philosophy from different lights of directions. Become convinced yourself of this knowledge, and without a doubt, all your difficulties of mind will disappear forever, and you will see Krishna face to face. Later to Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. So here Srila Prabhupada is saying that, again, here Srila Prabhupada is telling us how we should study the books. So you can see consistently Srila Prabhupada uses the word study in all the quotes we have been seeing. So it's not a casual reading. And here he's adding one more point, and that is see the philosophy from different lights of direction. That means we try to understand the philosophy from different angles, from different viewpoints. And in this way, we can actually get into depth of the understanding of the philosophy. And in this way, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to become convinced of knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And the result of that, he says, will be that the various difficulties of the mind will disappear. The mind presents so many difficulties, so many challenges, so many allurements and agitations, especially in the present age, where there are so many distractions for the mind can hardly focus, concentrate on anything. And so therefore, in such a situation where the mind is always greatly disturbed, so if we want to focus the mind, then it is essential that we have a proper understanding of the philosophy, and so that the stronger intelligence can control the flickering mind. And in this way, we can focus the mind on Krishna consciousness and purify ourselves, make progress, and ultimately achieve the ultimate goal of seeing Krishna face to face. Okay, please read. Somebody else, please read.
Steadiness. Yes, as Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes,
Yes, yes. As a sannyasi and GBC, your first duty is to read my books. Otherwise, how will you preach? In order to remain steadily fixed in Krishna consciousness, there must be a sound philosophical understanding. Otherwise, it will become only sentiment. Whenever you find the time, please read my books. Letter to Satya Swarupa Dasa Goswami Chanari.
So we find Srila Prabhupada is writing quite a few of these letters to the senior-most devotees of the moment. He really wanted the leaders to properly understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness so that they set the right example for all the devotees within the movement. And so, if one wants to effectively preach, then it's very essential that one must have the proper knowledge. Another very important point which Srila Prabhupada is making over here is, and that is to remain steadily fixed in Krishna consciousness. There must be a sound philosophical understanding, otherwise it will become only sentiments. So a sentimental platform means working on the mental platform. So mental platform means we are giving control to the mind. And what is the nature of the mind? The mind essentially has two functions, correct? Can anyone say what are the two functions of the mind?
Sankalpa and Vikalp.
Thinking and willing.
Say that again, please.
Thinking and willing. Which is something flickering. It's flickering.
Not clear.
Thinking and willing. Nature is flickering.
Keep moving from one place to another.
Accepting and rejecting.
Yes, that's right. Accepting and rejecting. Yes, sankalpa and vikalpa. These are the two functions of the mind. So when everything in life goes very wonderfully, just the way I want, and every person is behaving with me in the right way, and life seems to be going just the way I want, then the mind will say, okay, Krishna consciousness is wonderful, take it. But then that's very unlikely in this material world, which is a world of constant upheavals and disturbances and agitations, it's very unlikely that things will go on just the way I want. But the nature of the mind is when there are disturbances, then the mind will say, oh, Krishna consciousness is very difficult, very impractical, so give it up. So that's the nature of the mind. So if one is simply on the sentimental or mental platform, it's very difficult to be steady in the practices of devotional service. But if one is practicing Krishna consciousness on a sound philosophical basis, on a sound philosophical foundation, then even though there may be difficulties and challenges, still one will have sufficient strength to withstand them. Just like in a building, there could be a tall building, 20 stories, 25 stories. So Srila Prabhupada, in one of the lectures, he was commenting on a building which was 108 stories. I don't know in India if we have such tall buildings so far. But in any case, so what do you think is the most important part of the building?
Foundation.
Yes.
Foundation.
Why? Why is the foundation the most important part of the building?
Otherwise, the building will collapse over a period of time.
Yes. But how many people, when they see a building, they glorify the foundation of the building? Rarely, isn't it? Rarely anyone glorifies the foundation of the building. Most people will glorify the architecture and so many different facilities and so many things people will glorify. How many appreciate the foundation of the building? But yet, the foundation of the building will be appreciated when there are storms. When there are storms and cyclones and hurricanes, then that will be a test for the foundation of the building. Unfortunately, because the foundation is not visible, then sometimes even builders may tend to not focus so much on the foundation. And so in India, we do have cases in the recent past of some buildings and bridges collapsing. Right? Why? The foundation was not strong. And one tends to neglect the foundation because it's not the obvious visible thing. And people may not really take that into account. But the test of the foundation is when the storms come. Similarly, in our practices of devotional service, when everything goes smoothly, then fine. But then it's just the nature of the material world that practically at every step, there are going to be dangers. Padam padam yad vipadam. At every step, at every moment, there is a potential danger. And in those challenging situations, how we face those challenging situations and how we are able to steadily continue on in our practices of devotional service will very much depend on how strong is the foundation of our philosophical understanding. So when the foundation is strong and we are very clear as to the goal of our practices, the goal of human life, when that is very clear, then in spite of the storms, in spite of the challenges, in spite of the difficulties, the temptations, the agitations, in spite of all that, one will be able to go ahead in the practices of devotional service. And so therefore, even though this foundation of one's study of the scriptures may not be very openly appreciated, by devotees in general. But in order for me to sustain my own devotional service, my own devotional life, in spite of the storms and difficulties, then it becomes my own responsibility and my own duty to lay the foundation of a proper philosophical understanding very strongly. And if I don't do that, then I stand to lose when the storms come. I will fail to have the strength to withstand the challenges and the difficulties. And so therefore, it is very important for us to lay that strong foundation of philosophical understanding. Okay, please read the next quote.
Devotees can raise hand. Yeah. Yaranjana Mataji.
Read and apply. Yes, reading my books will help you. Philosophy must be there. But if you do not also apply the philosophy by participating in all temple affairs like rising early, attending Mangala Arati, performing devotional service, then simply learning the philosophy will have no effect. Letter to Dayananda.
So here Srila Prabhupada is adding another angle to the studying of philosophy and reading his books. So here Srila Prabhupada is saying that yes, we must understand the philosophy, but at the same time, following the instructions that have been given in the books is also very important. So we don't want to be simply like dry philosophers. As Srila Prabhupada has written that famous statement in the purpose to the Bhagavad Gita, religion without philosophy is sentimentalism, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation. And so therefore, we simply don't want to be dry mental speculators and simply studying the books. But the ultimate purpose of studying the books is to put that philosophy into action. And that is what Srila Prabhupada is indicating here. And so this appropriate balance of understanding the philosophy and then following the instructions therein is something which is very important for our progress. Because ultimately, the study of the philosophy is meant to bring about a transformation by gaining appropriate realizations in our practices of devotional service. And in order to gain those realizations by which we bring about a transformation in the hearts, following the instructions that have been given in the scriptures is of vital importance. And so therefore, Srila Prabhupada is indicating here that it's very important that we follow the instructions like attending the morning program, the Mangala Arati, and chanting the holy names, and all these practical instructions that Srila Prabhupada gives in his books, putting them into practice is also very important so that the philosophy actually has effects. The philosophy doesn't remain simply in the mind or the intelligence, but the philosophy actually sinks in within the hearts to bring about a transformation within the hearts. Okay, please read this one. So one who has not yet read can please read.
Okay, so I will read. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So nothing outside Srila Prabhupada books. There is no need to buy any of them. There is no need to buy any of my disciples to read any books besides my books. In fact, such reading may be detrimental to their advancement in Krishna consciousness, except in certain authorized cases. For example, to read some philosopher like Plato to make an essay comparing his philosophy with Krishna's philosophy. But otherwise, all such outside reading should be stopped immediately. It is simply another botheration. If my students cannot even read my own books thoroughly, why should they read others? I have given you TLC. What need is there to read Chaitanya Charitamrita translated by someone else? You are right to stop such reading.
So here we find that Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing the fact that we need to essentially focus on his books. And Srila Prabhupada here does not seem to encourage us to read too many other books. As it says here, it will simply be another botheration. So this is again very important in the current day and age where there is so much of information and all types of information can be downloaded so easily, can be read so easily, available so easily. But being focused on Srila Prabhupada's books is something which is very important. Why? Okay, maybe we can hear from some of you. Why is it important for us to focus more exclusively on reading Srila Prabhupada's books? Let's hear a few reasons from some of you.
Because as we have been understood by Bhagavad Gita, when we read, we said that Bhagavad Gita as it is, correct? So whatever Srila Prabhupada has translated is more almost closest to the Shastra. Whereas if we read some other books, then there is a possibility of contamination of this knowledge, which will deflect or divert ourselves to some other direction instead of a focused direction.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Yes, because Srila Prabhupada, yes, definitely is coming in the bona fide parampara, and so we get that pure knowledge. Okay, good point. Yes, Deepali.
Hare Krishna.
Right.
We should read Prabhupada's books because there is no any adulteration in that books. He touched the spirit of Krishna. He touched the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada. Other one else's books, they add their own mental concoctions in their.
Okay, very good point. Yes, no adulteration, no concoctions. Yes, Anagama.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Right.
Prabhuji, one important point is that ki Prabhupada philosophy is crystal clear. So we should read Prabhupada books.
Okay, the philosophy is present in a crystal clear manner. Good point. Thank you. Yes, Harish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one point I heard that when someone which is not in disciplic succession, if we hear from them, then just like milk becomes poison after touching by the snake. Similarly, if we hear even authorized philosophy from someone which is not in the disciplic succession, then it becomes poison for us.
Yes, good. That's a quote from Sanatana Goswami. So Sanatana Goswami has given us that warning that if we hear spiritual knowledge, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, if we hear from non-bona fide sources, then it is just like milk touched by the lips of a serpent. So the milk continues to look milk only. It looks like milk, but then there is a lethal effect after one drinks the milk. So similarly, it may appear to be the same Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam a person is speaking, but if it is from a non-bona fide source, then it may have some detrimental effect rather than a positive effects. Yes, Yamuna Vilas.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So one reason that why we should read Srila Prabhupada book is because Srila Prabhupada is preeminent Shiksha Guru. And Prabhupada also says that I will forever remain in my books. So if we want to feel presence of Srila Prabhupada in our life, then we must read Srila Prabhupada book. This is
good.
One.
Yes, very good point. Very nice point. Yes, so Srila Prabhupada, as you said, that he will always remain in his books. And so therefore we can really access Srila Prabhupada's mercy by reading his books. Yes, very good point. Yes, Mukund Patru.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Basically, what I feel is that it will create a conflict between what we are currently practicing and when we hear something which is beyond out of box of our parampara, and that will lead us to divert it from our current progression, which may cause us to fall down from our day-to-day practice. That will, at the end, that will what the end output will appear. If we read something, we'll get into trouble of something which is not in our parampara. So what I feel is that it's always required what we are practicing, it should be in cohesive with what exactly we are reading. Suppose we are practicing one thing, we are reading something, it will create a conflict in such a way that we will start doubting in what we are practicing. And in one part of time, we will deviate from that practice and we will that is more, or something coming which is something very different, we will, it's very natural, we will get attracted by that and we will start navigating towards that, and that will finally lead to that will end up with some other story, and which may not be the may not be the progression.
Right. Yes. Yes, so to prevent diversions, deviations, and to remain on the proper track, sticking to Srila Prabhupada's books is very important. And so therefore, yes, this is what Srila Prabhupada wanted, and we should definitely essentially stick to read Srila Prabhupada's books, especially for devotees within ISKCON. It is, as Srila Prabhupada is our founder-acharya, it's very important that we understand his mood and mission, understand his instructions and follow those instructions. And so therefore it is very vital for us to properly read Srila Prabhupada's books in the first place. So as Prabhupada is saying that unless one reads his books thoroughly, what is the need to read any other books? That means the first thing is that we need to study Srila Prabhupada's books thoroughly. And then, of course, somebody may ask this question nowadays, there are so many other books coming, even by our own ISKCON devotees, there are so many books coming. And so what should be our attitude towards those books? And so, so our understanding is that, yes, we can definitely read those books also, because Srila Prabhupada did want his disciples also to write. But then those other books can be used as reference books. But our mainstay reading always has to be Srila Prabhupada's books. I don't know, maybe if some of you have heard this analogy given by His Holiness Kadam Kanan Swami Maharaj. He would often give this example of a meal. So just like if you have a meal, then the menu for the meal, for most of us, we are all Indians. And so I'm sure for most of us, the standard menu for our meal is always going to be rice, dal, sabji, chapatis. Okay, so that's usually what's the standard Indian menu anywhere. And so that always remains the standard menu, isn't it? It's not that it changes after some years. It's not that we have that for 20 years or 30 years and then we start having something else. No, that always remains the standard menu. And at the same time, maybe sometimes we take some sweet or some pickle or something like that, but that is always remains as a side dish. Does it ever happen that any one of us would have only a plate full of pickle for lunch? Would that any happen? No, it never happens, isn't it? So that always remains a side dish. So similarly, he gave this example that similarly, our mainstay reading always has to be Srila Prabhupada's books, and other books which help us to get a better understanding of Srila Prabhupada's books can always be used as reference books. Okay, please read this one.
I had one doubt about, you mentioned TLC over there in the previous slide. What
exactly? TLC is Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Sorry for using a short form.
Okay.
But TLC means Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, please read this one.
Hare Krishna. Understanding from varieties of angels. I am very much stressing at this point that all of my students shall be very much conversant with the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and that they should read our books very diligently, at least 1 or 2 hours daily, and try to understand the subject matters from varieties of angels.
Angles. Okay, so fine. So here again, Srila Prabhupada is stressing that we must be very much conversant with the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so you can see how Srila Prabhupada is, he really wants us to deeply study the Krishna conscious philosophy. And so here he says that we should read our books very diligently, at least 1 or 2 hours daily. And then try to understand the subject matter from varieties of angles. That means trying to get an in-depth understanding of the philosophy. Yes, please read this one.
In my books, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is explained fully. So if there is anything you do not understand, then you simply have to read again and again. By reading daily, the knowledge will be revealed to you. And by this process, your spiritual life will develop. You may please me the most by reading the books and following the instructions therein. Letter 2.
So here Srila Prabhupada is giving a solution to what to do if we don't understand something. So the solution is what? Read them again. If you don't understand something, read again and again. That's the solution which Srila Prabhupada gave very often. So you can hear in his lectures also. Prabhupada has said this. And if we don't understand something, we simply read again and again. And then by reading daily, the knowledge will be revealed to you. So this is the process that we need to follow. And again, as we did discuss this point, that we not only need to read the books, but then follow the instructions therein. So when we follow the instructions that have been given in the books, the knowledge actually turns into realization, the gyan turns into vigyan, and then actually one will be able to apply and follow the instructions that have been given in the books and bring about a transformation in one's heart. Okay, read this please.
Those who have not read till now, maybe you can try.
A devotee in Mayapur once got up to live in the middle of Prabhupada lectures. Where is he going? Prabhupada asked. He has some work to do. A devotee answered. This drew fire from Prabhupada. What work? Nonsense. Useless you hear. Unless you hear. What work can you do? It will just be karma unless you hear. We cannot just read the books and do nothing for the spiritual master, but neither can we serve without the knowledge gained by reading the books. As Prabhupada stated in the later quoted above, we must both read the books and follow the instruction. This is the combination that pleases the spiritual master the most.
So this is a recorded lecture. You can hear it. Prabhupada is giving this lecture in Mayapur in 1974. He's speaking on Queen Kunti's prayers. That is the 8th chapter of the 1st canto. And so, just as he began the lecture, the Srimad Bhagavatam class, so one devotee stands up to go, and then Srila Prabhupada asks, where is he going? And some other devotee replies, he has some work to do. And Prabhupada says, as is said over here, what work? Actually, Prabhupada says, it will simply be ugra karma, ugra karma. So ugra karma means what? Simply materialistic work. Because what essentially differentiates ordinary work from Krishna conscious duties is what? If you see the work per se, the materialists and the devotees perform same work. The materialists cook, we are also cooking. They make garlands, we are making garlands. They construct buildings, we are constructing buildings. They sell books, we are selling books. Apparently, the activities seem to be the same. What makes the difference? It's just one word. Can somebody say it?
Offering it to Krishna.
Offering to Krishna, okay, that's correct. Yes, Dipali Mate?
In a devotee's life, Krishna is at the center.
Okay, Krishna is the center.
For the pleasure of Krishna.
Okay, for the pleasure of Krishna. If you want to put just one word, what's the difference between materialistic work and the work of devotees? Yes, Yamuna.
Surrender.
Surrender, okay.
Devotion.
Devotion, okay.
Selflessness.
Selflessness.
The consciousness with which we are
doing. Exactly. It's the consciousness with which the work is done. That makes the difference, the consciousness. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has named our society as International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is the consciousness that makes the difference. Otherwise, work per se is the same. But then how will the consciousness change? The consciousness changes when one has the right attitude with which one works. One has the right motive and the right purpose for which one works. And so therefore, how can one develop that right consciousness? It is possible by our practices of sadhana, the chanting, the reading, the hearing. This is how we develop that right consciousness. Otherwise, as Srila Prabhupada says, it will simply be materialistic work, ugra karma. And then Srila Prabhupada adds one more point in that same lecture. Srila Prabhupada says, if there is no regular hearing and chanting, then after some time, you will ask, why has my old spiritual master given me this huge burden of the deity to worship? He says, the Archa Vigraha will become Galagraha. The Archa Vigraha is the deity of the Lord. Galagraha. Galagraha means a huge stone tied around the neck. In other words, the practices of devotional service will simply become a huge burden because one has no taste, because one is not in the right consciousness. So how long will one carry the burden? One will have to give it up at some point. And so therefore, if there is no regular reading, hearing, chanting, then our practices of devotional service in time will simply become a huge burden. And then one will eventually give up the practices. And in the same lecture, Srila Prabhupada continues and he says, so in our temples, if there is no regular hearing and chanting, then these big, big buildings will simply become places where pigeons will build their nests and pass to. So Srila Prabhupada has given all these warnings so that we take very seriously these practices of hearing and chanting and reading. Otherwise, the tendency is to not take these practices seriously because usually there is not much accountability for these practices. Usually for various practical services in our movement, like book distribution, fund collection, temple construction, for all these practical services, there are deadlines, there are targets, and there's a lot of accountability involved. But usually there's not much accountability for these practices. But actually it is these practices which will give us spiritual strength. And in fact, there is one letter by Srila Prabhupada. He is instructing one of the GBCs to visit the temples in his zone and see that these practices of rising early in the morning, attending Mangalarati, chanting 16 rounds, the morning and the evening classes, the sadhana practices, they're going on properly. And then Srila Prabhupada writes a very important statement. He says, within these Vaishnava standards lies the spiritual strength of our movements. So individually and collectively for the entire movement, the spiritual strength comes from these core spiritual practices of reading, hearing, chanting. And so therefore, we cannot underestimate the value of these practices in our devotional lives. Okay, please read this.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Can I read?
Yes, please go ahead.
I think you may have already heard that in January of 1970, we will be holding an examination among all of our students on this book. And those who will pass shall be awarded with the title of Bhakti Shastri. With these examinations, I wish to encourage all my disciples to very carefully learn this philosophy of Krishna consciousness, because there are so many preachers required to bring this message to all of the corners of the earth.
So you can see how Srila Prabhupada is writing this letter right in 1969. So you can see that right from that time, Srila Prabhupada had this vision that he wanted devotees to systematically read and understand the philosophy so they can preach effectively. And that's the reason why Srila Prabhupada wanted these various courses. He wanted to have these examinations so that devotees read these books. So very early in the movement itself, Srila Prabhupada was planning all these things. Yes, so there's another one and similar. Yes, read.
Next January, there will be an examination on this Bhagavad Gita. Papers will be sent by me to all centers, and those securing the minimum passing grade will be given the title of Bhakti Shastri. Similarly, another examination will be held on Lord Chaitanya's appearance day in February 1970, and it will be upon Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Those passing will get the title of Bhakti Vaibhava. Another examination will be held sometime in 1971 on the 4 books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Teaching of Lord Chaitanya, and the Nectar of Devotion. One who will pass this examination will be awarded with the title of Bhakti Vedanta. I want all my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhakti Vedanta so that the family transcendental diploma of Bhakti Vedanta will continue through the generations. Those possessing the title of Bhakti Vedanta will be allowed to initiate disciples. Maybe by 1975, all of my disciples will be allowed to initiate and increase the numbers of the generations. This is my program. So we should not simply publish these books for reading by outsiders, but our students must be well versed in all of our books so that we can be prepared to defeat all opposing parties in the matter of self-realization.
You can see this letter is in 1968. So you can see how early in the movement Srila Prabhupada had this vision and this plan. You can see right here in this letter, Srila Prabhupada is stating all these degrees, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta. Right in 1968, Prabhupada is writing all this. And how he had this entire vision that how all his disciples will get the title of Bhaktivedanta and then will be allowed to initiate disciples. And that's how he wanted the parampara to continue on for the next 10,000 years. So this was Srila Prabhupada's vision, and that is exactly what we are trying to do. We are simply trying to execute Srila Prabhupada's vision and simply follow his instructions. That is all what we are trying to do. And by following his instructions in this direction, then that's how we please Srila Prabhupada. And that is our main goal, our main purpose of taking these courses is to simply follow this instruction of Srila Prabhupada. And by following this instruction of Srila Prabhupada, we can please Srila Prabhupada. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada navgati kuto. So that is how we please the Acharya, we please the spiritual master, and that's how we get the grace of Krishna. That is our only hope. And that is why we are trying to offer these courses so that we simply execute the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, please read. Yes, Sundari Mataji.
In this way, you have to understand by studying carefully the philosophy. We have got so many books now, and I want all of my disciples to read them carefully. Soon we shall be instituting Bhakti Shastri examination. All the Brahmanas will have to pass. Also, you must see that Brahmanas are given sufficient time to read the books. Soon we shall be introducing the Bhakti Shastri examination, which all Brahmanas will be expected to pass. It will be based on Bhagavad Gita, the Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Ishopanishad, and the small paperback books like Easy Journey. A Brahmana should be Pandita.
Yes, so Srila Prabhupada didn't want Brahmanas to simply have a sacred thread. Prabhupada said 2 paisa thread. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada, you can hear in his lectures, he would talk about some Brahmanas in India. They have Brahman thread, but they're pulling tela. So what type of Brahmanas are they? So within ISKCON also, Srila Prabhupada, in the early days, he did find that people are getting Brahman initiation but they're not reading the books, they don't have knowledge. And actually, Srila Prabhupada found that the outside people are criticizing ISKCON devotees, that they are Brahmanas, but they don't have any knowledge of Shastra. And so therefore, Prabhupada writes, a Brahmana should be Pandit. That means he must be well versed with the philosophy. So that's the reason why Srila Prabhupada is saying here very clearly that the Brahmanas should have at least the Bhakti Shastri. And that is what now we find that many spiritual masters within our society are making Bhakti Shastri compulsory for becoming a Brahmana, to get the Brahman initiation. And you can see Srila Prabhupada himself, he has given all these instructions. We're not doing anything new, but Srila Prabhupada wanted all this within our society. Okay, please read this.
Aims of Bhakti Shastri. After the student studies the Vedas under the master for some time, at least from age 5 to 20, he may become a man of perfect character. Study of the Vedas is not meant for the recreation of armchair speculators, but for the formation of character.
This is a very, very vital point. The study of the Vedas is not meant for the recreation of armchair speculators, but for the formation of character. So sometimes we find that people may be discussing the Shastras, discussing Vedas. They may sit around a round table conference or whatever. They may sit and discuss with cigarettes in their mouths. So what philosophy are they going to discuss, and what philosophy they will understand? So we must be very clear as to what is the goal of our studying the scriptures. Our goal is not simply to become academic scholars. Once a lady who was doing a PhD on religious movements, she came to interview Srila Prabhupada. So knowing Srila Prabhupada to be the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, she came to interview him for her PhD thesis. So she began by asking Srila Prabhupada, so Swamiji, we are seeing that these days so many Indian gurus and swamis and yogis are coming to America. So what effect do you think this will have on American culture? Srila Prabhupada replied by saying, American culture? What culture is that? So Srila Prabhupada was giving funny answers to all her questions. She was getting nowhere. So finally she said, Swamiji, let's change the subject. Now let us talk something about your philosophy. And to that, Srila Prabhupada, he spoke a very deep and instructive statement. Srila Prabhupada said, philosophy without character is of little or no value. Philosophy without character is of little or no value. And the same point Srila Prabhupada is stating here also. So ultimately, the purpose of studying the philosophy, the purpose of studying the scriptures is to apply that knowledge within our lives and bring about a transformation of character. That is the purpose. So it's not simply for armchair speculation. It's not simply for getting a degree. It's not simply for showing off to people that I have a Bhakti Shastri or a Bhakti Vaibhav. It's for none of these purposes. The purpose essentially is to become a person with character. And that is what is the most powerful preaching. If people see that we are devotees, we have devotional practices, but if we don't have the character of a devotee, how many people will be inspired? And that is why we find that there are so many religious organizations where there are so many scandals by the leaders of the organization. Some of them have been put into prison for illicit activities. The result of that is people's faith in not only those religious leaders, but in the practice of religion itself is so highly disturbed. People lose faith when they see that there are religious people who are speaking philosophy but are not practicing the philosophy in their own lives. People expect that we walk our talk. Srila Prabhupada, in one of his lectures, he talks of a personal experience when he was at Allahabad, Prayagraj. So he says that a very famous Mayavadi sannyasi came over there. There were thousands of people who gathered to hear him. He spoke very eloquently. He was speaking on the Shastra with so many references and quotes, a very scholarly presentation. But at the end of his presentation, he went behind stage and he asked, where is bidi to smoke? So when people see these things, what will be the effect of that philosophy? How many people will take the philosophy seriously when they see that these people actually don't practice the philosophy? And so therefore, we read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has spoken this very beautiful verse, Dharma sthapana hetu sadhura vyavahar. The principles of dharma, the principles of religion are established by the behavior of a saintly person. When people see that here is a saintly person who is walking his talk, who actually is living according to what he speaks, then that's what has a magnetic attraction. And that's exactly what happened in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Why Srila Prabhupada could attract thousands of people all over the world is because people saw that here is a man who just doesn't speak, but he practices what he speaks. And that's what had such a magnetic attraction on thousands of people all over the world. And so we must always remember that this is one of our key goals for studying the scriptures. And if we keep this in mind, and with this viewpoint, with this ideal, with this goal in mind, we study the scriptures, then we can be in the right direction. So it's said that any learning process has three broad stages. So first is Shravanam, hearing the knowledge from the teacher. There has to be Mananam, gaining an intellectual understanding by reflecting on what is learned. So Mananam is contemplation on what one has heard, on what one has learned. And then there is Nididhyasana. So then there is realization and living according to that realization. Then actually the learning becomes complete. And so therefore, in our Shastric studies, we need to follow this, that we just not hear and read and just forget about it, but there must be some discussion, there must be some contemplation on what we read, on what we hear, and then seriously try to apply that within our lives so that there's realization and transformation. Okay, the same thing has been put in a slightly different way, 4 stages of learning. So there's Aditi, that is to learn the subject thoroughly. Then there's Bodha, to gain insight and proficiency in one's learning. Then there's Acharan, realizing the purpose of and living according to our learning. And then finally there's Prachar, giving this knowledge to others. So then that's how the learning actually becomes very solidified. Okay, please read this one.
Without aim, what is the use of practice? If we have no goal, there is example. Man without any aim is ship without any rudder. So suppose if airplane is going with an aim to land in some country, but if he goes on simply without any aim, then there will be disaster. So without aim, what is the use of practice? That is foolishness. Without goal, practicing is foolishness.
Yes, so we must have a definitive goal for whatever we do. So similarly, for our Shastric study also, we should have definitive goals. And so some of these goals are, as we stated, to develop character, to develop a proper understanding of the scriptures, to personally apply that within our lives, and finally to preach that knowledge to others. And also very important, we're studying the Shastras, especially Srila Prabhupada's books, to very carefully understand Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission and try to live by Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission. Okay, so that's what we wanted to discuss essentially about the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So does anyone have any comments or questions on what we have discussed so far?
It was fine to me. Just I was thinking that orientation session would be something like what will happen in 2 years. As we know that it's a 2 years program and all that would be there. It was a wonderful session discussing that what is the mood of reading Srila Prabhupada book, why should we read, and that too from Srila Prabhupada's letters, lectures. So thank you for this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Yes, Harsh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, as you stated in the lecture that we can also read the books written by Srila Prabhupada disciples. So my question is, Prabhuji, we can read these books after completely reading Srila Prabhupada books, or in between also we can read those books, or we should take permission from our authority and then only we can read. So how to understand these things?
Yes, definitely. As we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books also, we can definitely read these other books with the aim to get a better understanding of Srila Prabhupada's books. But as we already discussed the point about the proportion, so the other books can always be used as reference books, and our mainstay reading always needs to be Srila Prabhupada's books. So just like during the Bhakti Shastri, for getting a better understanding of Bhagavad Gita, we can refer to Burjan Prabhu's book. That is, what is that book? Surrender unto me. So similarly for Bhakti Vaibhava also, Srila Prabhupada, Burjan Prabhu has written this book, Unveiling His Lotus Feet. So like that, so these books actually help us to get a better understanding of Srila Prabhupada's books. And so definitely they can be complementary, they can be supplements to our reading of Srila Prabhupada's books. Is it okay?
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. So Adi Bhagwan Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So do we discuss something more about assessment and some other things also, or?
Yeah, Prabhuji, actually we had planned to do it tomorrow.
Okay.
The discussion on the student's handbook.
Mm.
So tomorrow 11 o'clock we have a session on that. So I will be discussing with them about the whole, as somebody asked about next 2 years, what are we going to do and how the assessments will happen and what is the sequence of classes that will come. So that will be discussing elaborately tomorrow. But today, if you want, you can speak something about it so that the weight of the assessment and other things is also there. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, since you're going to speak about it tomorrow, that's fine. So we won't get into the details of that, but maybe just a point about the assessments. So as after any course or whatever we study, every study has some assessments at the end of the course, right? I'm sure most of you are graduates and postgraduates. So I'm sure all of you have experience of that. Whenever we study something, there is some examination to test how much we have studied and how much we've understood. So similarly here also we do have examinations, but the examinations can definitely be taken as an impetus for us to better study Srila Prabhupada's books rather than taking them very casually. So actually by having the exams, then we actually get an opportunity to go deeper into studying Srila Prabhupada's books and it gives us an impetus to memorize certain things, understand things better. And so ultimately the whole process is devotional practices for our own purification and our progress in spiritual life. And so it should not be taken as a burden. Okay, the assessments should not be taken as a burden, but they should be taken as a wonderful facility for us to read and understand Srila Prabhupada's books and understand the philosophy. So if we take it in the right spirit, then actually going through the assessments will be a very pleasurable experience. And we hope that everyone will take these assessments and examinations in the right spirit. And we hope that everyone has a wonderful experience going through this Bhakti Shastri course. And I'm sure that we will stand to gain a lot by systematically reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And so we have many wonderful teachers who will be teaching these various books. And I'm sure we will get a lot of benefits by taking this course in our own individual practices of Krishna consciousness, and also to preach and give this knowledge to others. Is it okay?
I have a question. Will the assessment, will or can the assessment be open book? Because Kali Yuga memorizing is a challenging
Yes,
part.
yes. That is all. That has already been taken into consideration. So we don't have only closed book exams. So we have some closed book exams. We also have open book exams. We also have shloka test. So yes, so we have a different variety of examinations. So you don't have to be overburdened by too much of memory and recall, as is the case in many of modern day examination systems. But our ISKCON devotees have taken into consideration our failing memories in the age of Kali Yuga. And so therefore we do have a good amount of weightage for open book exams also. Does it help?
Thank you.
Hari. Anything else? Adi Bhagavan Prabhu, do we address anything else or should we conclude?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can conclude. Yeah. Yeah. So I would like
Okay,
to.
let's see if there's some concluding quote here. Okay, you can read this.
Assessments. Prabhupada always.
No, somebody else can read. Somebody else can read. One of the students can.
Yeah.
Assessments. Okay.
Yeah, Kishore Madhaprabhu, please go ahead.
Assessments. Prabhupada always encouraged devotees to write. Realization means you should write, every one of you. What is your realization? You write your realization. What you have realized about Krishna, that is required. It is not passive. Always you should be active. Whenever you find time, write. Never mind 2 lines, 4 lines, but you write your realizations. Shravanam Kirtanam, writing or offering prayers, glories, this is one of the function of a Vaishnava.
So Prabhupada is encouraging us to write. And so the assessments and examinations are a means to write what we have learned and what we have realized. So, so that's basically, so Srila Prabhupada wanted us to write our realizations. And that is what we'll be doing in these various closed book exams and open book exams. Yes. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. So once again, thank you all very much for kindly agreeing to participate in this Bhakti Shastri course, giving us an opportunity to serve all of you. It is our extreme pleasure and honor to serve so many wonderful Vaishnavas from different places. So thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to serve, and we look forward to serving you and having your wonderful association throughout the Bhakti Shastri course. Thank you very much. Also like to thank Adi Bhagavan Prabhu for coordinating the course and becoming the primary teacher for the course and taking responsibility for this batch. We are extremely grateful to Adi Bhagavan Prabhu for this wonderful service. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We'll also altogether like to thank His Grace Vamsivadan Prabhu, even though he is the director of our Bhaktivedanta Rajavidyalaya, but he has kindly agreed to come and give this session. So we'd like to thank in 2 ways. One is all of us can maybe put one word appreciation. How did you like the session in the chat box? And also we will chant once Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So kindly type in the chat box and we can chant one Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And also, we'd like to thank all the participants, even though you are at home and many of the participants are the congregation devotees, but you have kept your videos on and throughout the session. And it has been very, very enjoyable and very enlivening, as the devotee is saying. Wonderful being interactive session. Yeah, so all devotees can put just one word or something as an appreciation. Session was very good, convincing points on why to study and how to study. Yeah, thank you very much, Pankaj Prabhu. Arun Prabhu is writing empowering. Yamuna Mataji writes inspirational. Okay. Yeah. So, Prabhuji, it was very nice session, Prabhuji, as the devotees are saying. So, thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
For being with us. Thank you very much.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna,
Tomorrow we'll meet at 11 o'clock. So all of you will get the details in the WhatsApp group. So the link will remain same as you received it today throughout the 2 years. And then we will be joining tomorrow 11 o'clock and discussing about the course structure and then the study materials, assessments and attendance policies and assessment policies and what sequence of books are we going to study and who are the teachers. Tomorrow we are going to learn that. Okay. So thank you very much for participating today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.